In terms of time limits, we do have a big crowd, and I noticed a lot of people said they wanted to speak. The applicant will have 15 minutes, the appellant will have 15 minutes. Everyone else, I'd like to limit your testimony to 3 minutes.
Hello, good morning. My name is Krista Vector. Address is Ashland, Oregon, 97520. I represent Uproot, the applicant of the Type 2 land use farm crop processing facility proposed in Ashland. The following information supports approval of our application. We have completed our initial planning site visit with ODA Food Safety Inspector Shane Kinney and received preliminary approval of the initial layout and kitchen planning. An approved site plan with location of rotational grazing pens have been submitted, including setbacks and all farming infrastructure. We have completed and received approval from our Jackson County Planning on-site setback visit with Francisco Hernandez. DEQ, the State Water Master, and ODA have all recently completed an extensive tour of the property and determined compliance and no violations. Water Master, TID, DEQ, all state that our current and proposed farming activity is in compliance, and nothing within the 3 agency comments indicates requirements are not feasible. We registered our small farm with the Oregon Department of Agriculture's Water Pollution and Control Facilities General Permitting Process Program. We established the development of our animal waste management plan under the supervision of our livestock water quality specialist, Christopher Anderson. We have been informed by our livestock water quality specialist he will be in charge of all compliance matters in regards to processing and farm waste management and the general waste management, with ongoing compliance supervision. We have an on-site meeting with Mr. Anderson this week and will be solidifying our waste management plan. We have received a notarized deed declaration. I have that here. I guess I got so excited I took off with it last meeting. Now that's what I have.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. My name's Adam Danforth. I live at 4th. I'm an Ashland resident. I'm also the founder of the Butcher's Manifesto, which is an international organization that promotes sustainable butchery and craft butchery and preserved traditions around the world. I'm also the founder of the Good Meat Project, which is a Portland-based nonprofit that promotes responsible consumption of meat and supporting sustainable farms and local agriculture. And I'm also a board member of the Chefs Collaborative, which is a national organization that helps support local food networks through increased purchasing through chefs and culinary professionals and things like that, as a means of educating the public about major issues around food and doing that through menus that are better designed in order to convey that. The motto, which is change menus, change minds. So I'm an Ashland resident first and foremost. I've toured the farm that's in question. I am a meat eater, but I'm a conservative meat eater, and I'm one that asks a lot of questions about how things are done. I tour around the world and I teach on-farm slaughtering, I teach whole animal butchery, I teach zero waste processing of animals as well. And so my livelihood and my career and my life is generally rooted within vetting out farms based upon their processes, and especially based upon the claims that they say. As we know, there's so many farms that are out there that claim sustainability practices, and when you really delve deep into it, you begin to see the holes in their patchwork of what they claim. So, you know, for me, I don't really often stand up in support of farms because a lot of them I don't think fulfill what they claim to. But I have been there, and I have toured the facility, I've looked at the plans themselves, and I also understand some of the claims that have to do with erosion and aspects of pollution and things like that in the area. One thing that I would like to say is that the processing facility that is in question, certainly there's state limitations of the processing capacity that I think is causing some of the uproar. That's not the intentions of the farm itself, is to maximize the 20,000 a year processing of the chickens themselves, so that's one thing to consider. Also, I would like to say that in the support of, or or in the appeal against it and the claim of a slaughterhouse and all the sort of detrimental impacts of a slaughterhouse and the related environment, whether it be water and air and things like that, most of what I've seen has to do with large-scale slaughterhouses, of which this is not one. This is not one that deals with manure lagoons. It's not one that deals with aspects that have to do with air quality around it. The things that may come around that people have in question of how pigs are being raised isn't actually, I think, the appeal around the building itself. How the pigs are being raised and how people view the pigs being raised is, I think, a different consideration. I would also like to say that in the realm of regenerative approach to creating a better soil mass on a farm, sometimes that process is a long view, and the short-term impact on that can be one that doesn't look as bucolic as people would like it to, especially when it's a working farm and people are most of the time used to things like wineries and estate farms in the area. It's not always the case when you're actually trying to produce food for your community. So, you know, the look of a working farm that has a long view of actually restoring agriculture there is one that has many different phases. So it's also part of what you see in the fragile ecosystem that I think is represented on the hillside. I think in general for Ashland, I moved here 5 years ago, and there's no local processing that offers what this will offer, which is still a very small amount of the capacity that people eat in Ashland. If we want to eat local meat like a lot of people do, what we need is local processing. And this is a very, very small capacity for what we actually consume at Ashland. The chickens that you see at the farmers markets are usually processed on an open air environment. This is a large step up in the sanitation and the safety.
Wrap up?
Yeah, and the safety in order to process the chickens for what they're trying to do. Most of the meat that's claimed to be local or supported in places like the co-op and things like that are, you know, being processed in facilities that are exactly what people are processing here. So I want to encourage people.
Stop, Mr. Danforth, thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your testimony. Some of the issues about animal raising are not really what's at issue here. What's at issue here is the proposed farm processing for, you know, the slaughter of chickens and processing and the processing of pork products. So, you know, the animal raising is a farm use. It's not really an issue in this particular proceeding. We had a couple other people, I think, that indicated they were going to be testifying in favor of the application.
My name is Annette McKenna. My address is in Talent, Oregon, 97540. I recently moved here about 5 months ago, and my goal was to, three things was to find clean food, support local business, and also buy a home. And I didn't really think it'd be that difficult to find clean food when I moved here. And in the store, sadly, we have chicken that is from Smart Chicken, which is produced by Tyson Farms, and it's all fed corn and soy. So my goal is to have food that is not fed corn or soy, that is raised responsibly. I've been to the farm. When I was at the farm, the chickens were running around eating pumpkin, and who doesn't love pumpkin? But I just want clean food, and I really feel that we need to have local food produced clean, and it's very rare. Right now, I purchased from a farm in Southern California. I have it shipped here, and that's money lost that I could spend in my community or my neighboring communities. And I think it's really important to consider having local meat and for us to work and figure out how we can make that happen. For one, I think it's really important that we support 2 women in business. I mean, I personally do share my same passion for clean food. And I just want to make sure that we take all considerations and we do not stop producing local food. I think it's very important, and I just want to, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, great. Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Denise Krause. I live at 29 Ashland, Oregon. I'm a retired professor of preventive medicine in the field of public health and epidemiology. I would like to present for the record exhibits to support the statements addressing ordinances that will be made today from members of Don't Uproot Ashland. Uproot is located on a steep hillside shown on the photo on the right. Exhibit 1 shows the subject property, 2803, with the 1 acre parcel that you mentioned, 2806. This image shows the easement from Siskiyou Boulevard, cutting between Weisinger's Winery and home, and then cutting through the middle of 1hr10min17sec farm. The Ashland Canal of the TID irrigation canal borders the downslope line of the property, shown in blue. The TID then joins with Tolman Creek in the upper left. Immediately after crossing the TID and ascending a steep slope, you can see the slaughterhouse already under construction. The ring road with the abandoned marijuana grow in the bottom left. There are several neighboring properties visible in this view. Exhibit 2 provides a good view of the TID canal, the access road to
Could I
the ring.
interrupt you for just a second, Ms. Cross? That first photo, when was that from? Was that like a Google Maps photo or something?
No, that is one of our experts, GIS experts who created that.
Okay, I just wondered when it was taken. It's on.
This
Oh, there's
was
the
made
date down.
within the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, I see there. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering when it was shot.
that.
That's okay, I'm good.
So
Sorry, Danielle.
we're at Exhibit 2, provides a good view of the TID canal, the access road to the ring road around the property, and heavy forestation. This photo was taken in 2005 before the fire of 2009 and shows the property in its undisturbed state. Exhibit 3 shows the property badly burned after the fire of 2009. The fire made the landscape highly vulnerable to erosion. Exhibit 4 shows the landscape recovering nicely just 2 years after the fire, with forestation filling back in. Exhibit 5 provides an aerial view of the restored landscape just prior to purchase by Ms. Krista Vector in July of 2016. Exhibit 6, after just 1 year, the hillside had been extensively excavated to put in an unpermitted marijuana grow operation. The applicant would receive a permit for the grow after the fact, but was also fined for excavating without a permit and causing severe erosion of the slope, which was washing into the TID canal. Exhibit 7. The following year, in 2018, after abandoning the grow operation, many more trees were cleared, further exposing the vulnerable hillside. If I go back to 2017, and if you watch closely, you can see a lot of the trees further disappear. Okay, this map shows the 1 square acre zoned home site, which is not being used for residential. The living quarters are actually on the second floor of the slaughterhouse, which is being prematurely constructed just above the TID canal. The pink line outlines the TID canal. The blue arrow points to a proposed farm septic in very close proximity to the TID and just above 1hr's property. A closer view of the location of the proposed septic. Uproot Meats has been in business already for 2 years, but according to the Department of Environmental Quality, they do not have an approved septic to handle waste. They have about 32 pigs currently, each producing an average of 11 pounds of manure daily, which translates into about 107 tons of pig poop annually. The DEQ allows no more than 20 tons of pig poop to be composted annually without a permit. According to the DEQ, Uproot does not have a permit for waste management. Even at their current small scale, they are already well outside of regulations, and yet they propose expansion. These are the types of regulations that are in place to protect the health and safety of the public. Exhibit 8 shows the barren hog lot right above the TID canal. I was standing on the opposite side of the TID canal when I took this photo. Exhibit 9 is a view of the slaughterhouse already under construction, taken from across the TID irrigation canal. The applicant does not have an active building permit. Exhibit 10 shows again what was originally the barn/shop, according to county planning documents, then slaughterhouse, now including unzoned residential on the second floor. To the right, the chicken house is already being prematurely constructed without a permit. Exhibit 11 shows the expansive soils outlined in red caused by the heavy excavation performed by the applicant. The disruption to the soils is causing issues with water flow for downslope neighbors, as will be presented this morning. Exhibit 12 shows the slope of the access road measured in increments from Siskiyou Boulevard into the subject property. The elevations exceed in many places the maximum percent slope for firefighting and emergency equipment to access the property in the event of another fire, as will also be presented this morning. Exhibit 13 shows the waterways that are downhill from the subject property. The TID runs into Tolman Creek, which is designated for salmon and steelhead spawning, and then connects with Neal Creek, which is essential salmon habitat and waters subject to moratorium. In addition to the TID and natural waterways, Exhibit 14 shows one of many private wells of neighboring properties, downhill, downstream, and downwind of Uproot Ashland. I didn't realize that I would have 15 minutes, so I kept it to 5, but I would love to open my time up to share that with 1hr10min17sec and then 1hr10min17sec.
Okay, thank you.
I meant to wrap up with one statement.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. We all have a right to farm, but we don't have a right to harm.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm Tanya Moore. I'm an attorney in town here. I've been practicing here for well over 25 years. My office is at 19 South Orange Street. And I'm representing Dr. Krause as the primary organizer of Don't Uproot Ashland, which, as she mentioned, is it's just a community group as opposed to the project. It's opposed to the project because of where it's sited. There are many people involved in this group who appreciate good locally grown food and don't want to discourage those efforts. The problem is this site. The site is the big issue. There are better sites for raising pigs in our community. I submitted a 10-page hearing memorandum, as you may have noticed. So I do address some of the legal issues that you've raised, but I will say at the moment that I'm a little disappointed because while we are arguing that a greater process and additional criteria at the county level should be applicable to this project by way of a Type 3 permitting process because the slaughterhouse is designed and will be permitted to slaughter 20,000 chickens a year. The applicant did not apply for a 1,000 chicken slaughterhouse per year, which is what is allowed pursuant to 283(1)(r). That is not what they've applied for. And so as a result, I feel like we're going a little bit backwards because we are arguing that at least a Type 3, and in fact the Type 4 process, is really applicable here. And the reason the Type 4 process is applicable is because this is a CAFOS. And therefore it falls within the use category under the county's code for a composting site. And that requires a much higher level process and criteria. So those arguments are made there, but I will say that, I don't believe Brent Mawr doesn't apply to this. This is not an outright permitted use. Perhaps the pig production part of it is, but therein lies a problem with the CAFOS part of it and the waste management part of it. And the county can't just kick all of this to state agencies and just, condition the application or the approval on the applicant getting state permits. Because these are land use issues as well. These are site-specific issues, and the county can't just willy-nilly put in a bunch of conditions, especially ones that are extremely open-ended and vague, just saying get all your state and federal permits. That's not appropriate. The process has been really disappointing in the sense also that we are now here, not only do we make the arguments in the record that the county didn't have enough information, they failed to require enough information from the applicant in order to make the decision in the first place. So I would just throw out here on my soapbox for a minute, but it's a real prejudicial issue the way we are handling these processes. Instead of using this process where we have to hope that somebody's watching and is going to actually file an appeal where we get our de novo hearing, all of this should have been done before the county's decision. So a lot of the comments that I've made and others will be making have to do with the fact that we don't have the technical information that's really necessary for us to determine whether these slopes and these soils really can accommodate this operation, and that's because we need that technical information. If it's flowing in now, I am at this point asking Your Honor for not only a record period to keep open for 7 days for purposes of submitting additional information, but at this point, I think I'd like to be able to come back and do some more argument before you with regard to whatever else they've submitted at this time. So I'll make that request now. But as you know, and just...
Okay, well, I'll take that under advisement as a request
Sure.
to leave so I have to leave the record open or continue. That's state law.
Okay.
So we'll do that at the end of the hearing. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
So just at least for purposes, and I know you haven't had a chance to read those 10 pages of single-space memorandum, but I just want to highlight some of the claims we make. We argue that the county, by adopting this process and implementing the process the way they have, they've really impermissibly shifted the burden to the citizens of this community. But more to the substance, some of the substantive issues, I would say that we are arguing that that the county failed to actually resolve this balancing that happens under the criteria relevant to the effect on the surrounding landowners. And partly that's because of the process and because the county did not have the information, did not investigate the actual impacts on these other surrounding operators of farm and forest land around them. So you're going to get, I think, about 15 different detailed statements about how these properties are affected, and I'll just highlight a few of them. What Ms. Ra is pasturing and has a milking operation, and she's already employed significant costs, more than $6,000 annually, in just the loss of revenue, and that's going to be anticipated to continue. We've got the Weisingers, and there's comments about traffic going through this private easement that's anticipated to discourage patronage at the winery and the vineyard. We've got Ms. Hanson Bernard. They're already experiencing financial impacts to their 22-year-old guest equine ranch, and they anticipate a potential loss of income estimated at $14,000 a year. And then we have Sally Steele and a couple others that are way down at the bottom of the hill that are experiencing incredible surface runoff and groundwater impacts. We also are arguing that the structure, the site plan that was submitted to the county for approval in the first plan was not what, and you can tell by the references to the record, was not the same site plan that was submitted to the Department of Agriculture. And so it's been built. We don't know whether those drains are in there or not, but it's definitely got a different configuration, and so we make the argument that we don't even know if it's feasible that they can build at this point the facility that they've submitted to, or the plan that they've submitted to the Department of Agriculture. Significantly, the county needs and must, under the code, under 9.5, must require them access to Siskiyou Boulevard. And that doesn't mean they get to use the private easements. And that's all they've got right now, and they've really impacted the landowners on those private easements. So they are going to have to build out a private road. They have a flag lot to do it, and that has to be a condition of this application. And I'll say it this way: it's because we believe, and we proved, I believe, that this is a commercial operation. And so there's some detailed analysis as to the legal definitions in the statutes as to why we believe this is a commercial operation and will require that level of development. They need direct access to Siskiyou, and they can use a private road, but they can't use private easements to ensure access. Okay, then I've mentioned the confined animal feedlot issue, which we believe also pops it up to a level 4
You
issue.
could wrap up?
I think I will try to do that.
I will read carefully everything that you submitted.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
I'm 1hr10min17sec. My farm is immediately below the subject property. My address is Ashland, Oregon, 97520. I'm addressing issues related to sections 4.23A, 4.23B, and section 9.51D of the Jackson County Land Development Ordinance. From 9.51D, commercial or industrial land divisions must be served by county road, state highway, or city street that is improved to county, city, or state standards, either through direct access onto such roads or through an approved private road. This commercial endeavor that far exceeds the scale of family farm only has my driveway as an access. It is not a private road. All their traffic, owners, employees, trucks, and there are quite a few heavy trucks counted to what is in their application, customers, contractors, and more must travel the length of my farm through both gates, passing both barns and 20 feet from my home. Addressing 4.2.3A, that it won't force a significant change in accepted farm practices. To understand the forced change, the impact on my farm and family, one must understand the configuration of my land. It's quite steep, mostly sandy loam, with huge underground rock plates. It's flanked by my pastures on both sides, which are bisected by my 650-foot driveway. Gates near my barn and the top of my property protect neighbors from potential damage from my animals and protect my animals from predators. For 2.5 years, my farm suffered from their traffic. The bottom electric gate, because they open the gate from way down at the bottom of the hill, opens and I can't see it because it's way down at the bottom of the hill. I'm crossing this road trying to herd my animals from pasture to pasture. The gate's open, I lose livestock guardian dogs, I lose goats, I have to go chase them. What I've had to do as a result of this is to alter my milking times and shorten the distance between them. This severely impacts my production. Their traffic also frequently jams the gates open, eliminating protection. They don't know how to drive it, they push the button several times, the gates are blocked open. And I don't know that if I'm on another part of the farm, so I have animals escape. I've had 3 laying hens killed, near misses with goats and dogs, and I have clearly posted 5 miles per hour loose animals. It goes unheeded. I must rotate stock most days to ensure pasture growth on my land. Otherwise, I lose necessary feed. That's why I have to herd them back and forth. To minimize the risk from their traffic, well, I already mentioned I cut production, but it's cut to 1/2 of 1/3 what it used to be in terms of what I can produce. Because of their callous use of my upper gate, they've rendered my gates, by the way, inoperable 4 times. They did 1 repair, which left a 1.5 foot gap where animals could escape, and I wound up having to pay somebody else to repair that. I finally made that gate manual, and despite the signs which say leave gate closed, they repeatedly leave it open. And now I can't graze horses in my orchard grass anymore. I have to buy feed to replace that grazing, and I also have to pay someone to weed whack the grass I would have used for feed. CenturyLink won't repair the cable that their heavy trucks severed, so I can no longer have a landline at my place. Upper underground electrical, which I have for my orchard, is also endangered. 2 farm hands have left, citing pigs screaming, and I don't mean squealing, I mean screaming. Truck traffic by bedroom windows and stench from the excrement. Addressing 4.2.3b will not significantly increase cost of accepted farm use. Cost to our farm from Uproot meats to date: lowered milk production because of irregular milking intervals, loss of $320 to $400 a month, loss of orchard grazing, $1,000 a year, replacing and repairing 4 gates, $1,700 in gate arms, $750 in labor, replacing fence, tree, grapevine, herb garden smashed by their workmen, fence $400, still haven't done the garden, the estimate was $250. 3 laying hens killed, $60, speed bumps to finally slow their traffic, $943, security camera system because of vandalism by their people, $780, drivey damage not yet assessed, future costs I anticipate, lowered property value. Who wants to live next to this or put their farm next to this? They've already moved from 2 other locations because of this type of thing. Disclosure, contamination potential and actual stench and traffic, lower milk production, well testing, we will have to test yearly for the threatened contamination. My crops, eggs, milk, fruit and nuts, lost from the water contamination, won't be usable or saleable. I supply the power to the gates, which they use many times more than I do. The gate arms you have to replace every 2 to 3 years. That's another expense. They wear down. Mechanical longevity is related to use. increased driveway maintenance, corresponding vehicle maintenance, harm to the livestock and neighbors' property because of what goes on with the gates, which are jammed and broken. Also, we're worried about damage from mudslides. I have no idea what that would cost. Should this operation go through and be approved, this all gets worse. Thank you. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. We're into, obviously, to public testimony that's opposed to the application at this point.
My name is Nikki Hart-Brinkley, Ashland, Oregon. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm here today to speak on behalf of my husband, Matt Brinkley, and myself regarding 439-1801659ZON. We are residents of the city of Ashland who rely on safe drinking water that is periodically sourced from water carried by the Talent Irrigation District Canal. As Oregonians, we appreciate the value of a properly functioning land use system that minimizes the impact of urban land uses on the natural and working lands that surround us and make the Rogue Valley a special place to live. But this system only works when agreed upon rules are followed in good faith. I am here today because my husband and I have deep concerns regarding this application and its adherence to the rules. In this case, the Jackson County Land Development Ordinance. What might appear to be a simple case of a permitted agricultural use on EFU land is not. The applicant, whether accidentally or purposefully, has failed to provide county planning staff with sufficient information to approve her request. But more than this, these errors and omissions represent real threats to public health, safety, and welfare. First, the applicant has failed to disclose the addition of a residence on tax lot 2803. This consists of a dwelling on the second story of the proposed meat processing building. Our letter to this review body explains in detail why a residence at this location violates the Jackson County Land Development Ordinance. It is worth noting that the applicant has built this dwelling unit without obtaining building permits. 3 minutes is going fast. The applicant's site plan does not provide other important information. Section 9.1 of the JCLDO requires that the applicant will propose and the planning division establish limits of disturbance. No such information is provided by the applicant. Establishing these boundaries and implementing measures to control the off-site migration of sediment and pollutant-laden stormwater runoff is essential to the provision of water that is safe for application to crops and for consumption by humans. Mass grading of the site, which has resulted in significant loss of natural ground cover, including trees and shrubs, has occurred without review and approval by the county or other regulatory agencies. Let me just really quickly wind up. We're also concerned about the slope. We're concerned about fire access. And also the property, I would like to point out, is within the air quality non-attainment area.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, I'm Debbie Hansen-Bernard, and I'm Ashland, Oregon 97520. And I am here addressing sections 4.2.3A and B. I own and live on the property directly below the subject property. We share a fence line that runs across the entire length of the top of our property. We are a guest ranch established 22 years ago that also sponsors a program for breast cancer survivors through guided interaction with horses. It is important to have a quiet, peaceful atmosphere for this program to be successful. Hosting a program that requires a healing and positive environment directly next to a slaughterhouse interferes with the purpose that has been established for the program. The smells, the noise, and the overall energy emitted from the slaughterhouse may cause the director to seek another property. This would be a loss of $1,500 a year. Another direct loss of income would be losing potential guests. A lot of attraction for our paying guests have been the trails that run through the ranch on the upper part of the property and a tree house near where the slaughterhouse has been built. Guests often would ride their horses or go hiking and exploring on the trails with their children or have a peaceful glass of wine on the treehouse balcony overlooking the valley. That loss starts at $12,000 a year. If we only lose one customer a month. We have already lost a horse boarder due to her horse no longer willing to be ridden on the trails on our property near the subject farm. Loss of $250 a month. Horses are very sensitive to strange smells, and they especially stay away from areas where they smell death. As a result, the horses will not use the upper part of the pasture closest to the subject farm, so we have lost some use of pasture. We have witnessed the smells and noise firsthand. The first experience was the challenge of finding where the smell of death was coming from. It was found to be a dead and decaying pig that the other pigs were devouring along the fence line directly above the TID ditch. It was not a pretty picture. Another experience was finding the pig parts predators have carried over onto our property, and we have pictures of those. Since my husband died just a little over a year ago, my kids and I have been working hard, caring for our land and keeping our ranch running. All of us do depend on the revenue from our hard work. We also raise our own organic fruits and vegetables, and I'm very concerned about water contamination to our food as well as to our well. If there are negative environmental effects such as odor, water, and well contamination or traffic noise as a result of being close to a regulated livestock operation, not only would I lose renters and guests, there would also be expected reductions in property values as a result of those effects. Routine testing of the health and safety of our well water would also force us to incur additional expenses. Please deny the land use application submitted by applicant. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Sally Steele, and my property is below the site. I'm addressing ordinance 423A and 423B of the Jackson County Land Development Ordinance. I've lived on this property for more than 47 years, and I'm quite familiar with the water flow in the area. My property has many surface ditches and French drains used to carry the volume of water that comes off the hill above. For 38 years, and prior to the fire of 2009, the systems were able to handle that water flow and carry the water off to Tolman Creek. For the year after the fire, we began to have unusual appearances of springs that required more installation of drainage systems. But in 2017, the year after the excavation of the hill, we had massive volumes of water that we were unable to address. A spring that had once appeared under my home suddenly began flowing at the rate of 900 gallons per day. My friend barn is over 100 years old, and since that year, 2017, the 4-foot-high foundation has cracked and been forced inward from all of the water in the soil. I've had to hire concrete contractors to shore up the walls in attempts to save my barn. I spent many thousands of dollars in repair of washed out driveways and installation of berms to keep the water from washing out my home, and have lost grazing land in order to keep those firm. The DEQ allows up to 20 tons of slaughter and processing waste to be composted on site annually without a permit, as long as surface and groundwater is not adversely affected. Even without that slaughter and processing waste, the surface and groundwater has already adversely affected my property. TID has assured me that there are no breaks in their ditch, and testing of our irrigation lines has shown no breaks. The only cause is above, caused by the lack of vegetation on the formerly forested hill, excavation of roads and building sites, and denuding of hog pens. Hogs, by the way, do not graze. They denude. I can only imagine what scale of damage to the land will be realized with the addition of more hogs and chickens. The increase of the operation on the hill in question will only increase the expenditures that will be required to account for additional ground and surface water runoff. How much more pasture land will need to be sacrificed in order to save the structures and allow the animals to graze. The odors from the operation, raising, slaughtering, and processing will substantially increase the attraction of predatory animals. I am concerned especially of the more aggressive bear and cougar, and the cost of protective fencing for our livestock would be astronomical. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Could you give your name and address before you get started?
My name is
Thank you.
1hr10min17sec. I live directly below Uproot Meats. I'm referencing issues related to section 4.2.3 A and B. The operation of Uproot Meats drastically differs from what is described in their application and their publicity. While a home site is designated, they actually live in the unpermitted slaughterhouse, and their traffic and practices significantly harm our neighboring farms. Uproot claims hauling pigs to Roseburg for slaughter. We see the custom mobile slaughtering truck pass our home regularly and spend hours at Uproot. Uproot, the customers and employees, cost our farm thousands of dollars annually in damage to our driveway, fences, and gates, endangering stock in the process. Uproot doesn't train or oversee their employees to avoid damage and disruption at neighboring farms, or reimburse for resultant employee errors. One employee's truck had defunct brakes and bald tires. One warm, perfect summer day, his vehicle slid rapidly downhill past our home, smashing our fence, tearing up mature food-producing plants, and causing our livestock guarding dogs to escape. Irrigation to our pasture was damaged when an Uproot guest drove off our driveway after dark and his truck became stuck on top of the pipe. The guest called Uproot for help freeing his vehicle. They were unwilling to assist. We had to extend our workday to dig and tow him out. Others from Uproot twice used heavy equipment without permission on our farm's driveway, once nearly severing underground water and power lines just outside our barn. An adjacent farm owner interrupted an Uproot employee knocking down her fence and extending excavation onto her land, unadvised by Uproot of the property lines. Uproot's negligent stock keeping threatens surrounding farms. Multiple times, Uproot's goats were left loose all day along the TID, endangering neighboring farms' crops. Uproot's large dog escaped onto our farm several times, endangering our birds. Farm owner called begged her and was told, "I know, we saw her on our way out this morning. I'll pick her up tonight on my way home. Has she killed anything yet? She kills small animals." Uproot ignored subsequent instances, leaving the farm owner to catch, remove, and protect animals from the dog. Uproot built initial pig enclosures directly next to the TID and close to the nearest neighbor's farmhouse, where they still often keep pigs, moving them to higher up enclosures when expecting visitors. Uproot has not consistently provided their pigs with adequate food and shelter. Pigs screamed 24/7 for the first entire year. Horse farm owner 2 properties away reported the screaming was causing her children nightmares. When we thanked her for the noise when it decreased, when we thanked her for that, Victor replied, "We decided to feed them more." Uproot does not dispose of the animal parts in the manner described in their application. The dead pig that was mentioned before was left rotting for days before it was moved. And as you also heard, there were bones found.
If you could wrap up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so briefly, I just skip all the things you've heard before. Uproot has repeatedly refused to reimburse neighboring farms for damages. They have not demonstrated ability or sincere intent to mitigate damage for significantly increased traffic anticipated from increased business. Uproot verbally denied responsibility for damage and other financial impacts Uproot causes to neighboring farms, stating to us, "If it happens on your land, it is your responsibility."
Go ahead.
Good morning. I'll be brief because you've heard most of my testimony and it's submitted in the packet. My name is Jason Strandberg. My address is, the items that I've responded to are referring to sections 4.2, really the designation of the operation that Uproot has submitted on. I've heard, of course, that they operate a small family farm. That's wonderful. My family's farmed in this valley for over 60 years, so I certainly support farming in this valley. But what they've submitted for is a commercial operation. Specifically part of the application that concerns myself is the the comments referring to the composting operation that they proposed. Regardless of the manure and composting of the pig manure, which exceeds what type of the quantities that are allowed on an EFU property. The applicants have noted in that email to Mr. Hernandez that they plan to compost feathers. After just coming off a weekend of 30 to 40 mile an hour winds at our end of the valley, I can only imagine what a feather composting operation will impose upon the south end of our valley. Composting, the hazards of fire have been touched on with respect to this property. These hillsides here have shown, especially over these last few years, to present a pretty significant fire hazard. Composting inherently increases fire hazard and fire danger. Spontaneous combustion is a real occurrence. We see it happen regularly on the composting operation on the old Croman Mill site. That's a regulated situation, which is perfectly capable of handling and managing that. This property is not set up. There is no information in the applicant's proposal to how that would be managed, how that would be mitigated. We had asked that you reconsider this as truly a type 4 type of review process. Ms. Morrow touched on that. The details of that again are in the packet. But when you go down, you work through the tables in 4.2. This facility should have seen a type 4 review process and then been treated accordingly. So thank you.
Thanks for your testimony.
My name is Suzanne Maitake. I live at 186 Morning Light Drive, and I'm going to skip through this and make sure I don't bore you with redundancy.
You're not going to bore me. I just don't need to hear things more and more.
No.
And I will take all these comments into consideration. Thank you.
We strongly oppose the county's future approval of any hog and chicken facility run by property owners who have proved themselves unwilling to seek the necessary permits and unwilling to take the necessary steps to protect the air and water and soil quality in our community. We urge the county officials to determine certainty that the following conditions specified in the tentative approval document are met prior to operation. Prior to operation is a key word here. They were supposed to get, on page 7, number 10, prior to operation documentation that the TID requirements have been submitted. Same page, number 11, prior to operation documentation that all DEQ requirements have been submitted. We've been in contact with state and local officials since 2015. As we raised concerns about their marijuana grow, we focused on the water source. Where was the water coming from? I still don't know where their water came from to water their crops. The terracing and the excavation have been adequately described. The sediment, the runoff, the erosion. But they didn't apply for a permit to proceed with this before the operation was put in place. This prior to operation is the key here for us. Now they've applied for a new business and they've expanded their Uproot business, selling poultry and pork at local farm markets and advertising CSA shares for at least 2 seasons that we can remember. This steep slope is now we're concerned about the toxins that are flowing down this slope that will pollute the surface and groundwater and soil. That proximity to the TID irrigation canal has to be taken seriously. But so is the containment and the disposal of animal waste products, the inordinate use of water in order to slaughter and process animals, and then the disposal of that wash water and the wastewater. As of December 22nd, when I talked to Bill Myers at the DEQ, they had not received even an application for any permit to install a required industrial septic system. Where have those effluents been flowing for these past 2 years? These owners have ignored all rules and regulations governing the parcel that they have now. So what is to say that these owners' behavior in the past would not predicate what their future behavior is going to be? Please, we're urging you to determine the final approval of their application. Be very wary before you do so. We would hope the county and state safeguards the environment from the owners perpetrating more wanton damage to that once bucolic wooded hillside. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, it's in the packet.
Hello? Okay.
I can hear you fine.
My name is Joan Bisek. My address is Ashland. I'm a physician and have owned a 10-acre ranch on Tolman Creek Road for 27 years. My rear property line is situated downwind and about 1/3 of a mile west of the proposed hog and chicken slaughtering facility as the crow flies. I've watched this shearing of the hillside for 2 years with great concern, and I've seen construction of multiple buildings, often late at night also, and I wasn't aware the work was done without permits until recently. So my concerns regarding the proposed facility are the following. One, site selection, as many have alluded to. And let's see, LDO 9.3.1. I'm not that familiar with these codes, so I just wrote something and then I thought I better put the codes in. That's the way they operate. So anyway.
I can match it up.
Steep slope development, tax lot 2803. This in question has a 36% or 19.3 degree slope, at least according to what I understand. I have not been up there. This is not the type of terrain suitable for a hog farm and processing facility. The damage to the land by the pigs, as well as runoff from the denuded landscape, we've heard it all. I did a survey of locations of other slaughterhouses in Oregon. Some are large and some are very small, family-run businesses. None of them are situated on a steep hillside above a winery, homes with gardens, and small farms. They are all on flat land, usually near a road. Okay, so number 2, risk of contamination to TID in the Ashland Canal. We've heard about this, but I am very concerned about it. I do use TID. I water gardens and pastures, and I plan to keep using it as long as I live there, and I'm very fearful of the possibility of contamination. Because during low rainfall years, we use that TID Ashland Canal for our drinking water. It's mixed in with the Reeder Reservoir water. I looked that up, it was done last summer. They do it early in July, not when it's really in bad shape, but they mix it in July, and then in August and September, that's it, right? The mixture. So we are going to drink that water, and according to their application, their septic tank proposed is more than 30 feet away from the TID canal. That's the rule. That doesn't seem adequate to me, but is this the standard of the DEQ? 30 feet away. Okay. Number 3, as has been alluded to, this is not a small family farm, but rather a medium-sized confined animal feeding operation, CAFO. Many people haven't heard that term before, but they need to look it up. So the applicant has not obtained this permit yet, but it's in process, I understand, because I called Salem and they are waiting for it to come in the mail. So I don't know why they didn't submit that in September, but they did it now. Okay, number 4, the composting of animal parts has also been discussed. And more than 20 tons a year requires a permit. So we don't know how much is going to be composted. None of us do. Okay, I've downloaded photos of commercial slaughterhouses, but I don't really have a very good way to show that. I can send it to you. As I said,
if you'd like to submit it to the record, that would be great.
I will submit. I have it on a thumb drive, and I have pictures, but they're not in color because I don't have a color printer. So I did my best, but I'll submit it later. Okay. So all these slaughterhouses.
Pursuant to Ms. Morrow's request, we are going to be leaving the record open. I won't continue the hearing. I'll just leave the record open for people to submit things.
I'll get that to you. I promise.
For a period of time. Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, we live in. I just want to make sure everybody knows this, but we live in a valley prone to inversions. So this facility above us will be an issue with air contamination. And I also quote from an article by somebody named A. Heber at Purdue University about protection distances for sufficient dispersion and dilution of odor from swine buildings. So quote, for example, confined valleys where sensitive sites are downslope of the facility are much more vulnerable than flat, windy areas with no obstacles near the swine buildings. So, you all know we've lived through smoke, and it wasn't easy. living downwind of a pig farm and slaughterhouse will be far worse. So I ask that the application be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. You can
I'm
speak.
Carol Boyson,
Yes.
Ashland, Oregon. And what I'd like to do is to present to you a brief summary of the conditions we would like added to the document that we want the applicants to agree to. 1. Section 9.5.5, correct deficiencies in plans to construct an access road. Its performance characteristics and service materials must be provided. Provide the grade of the road. Provide curve radii. Provide cross-section and plan view of vehicle turnaround. Provide design and structural capacity of bridge over TID canal. 2. Section 9.5.5, parentheses A, 2. Provide construction specification requirements for a vehicle bridge over TID canal for weights of 50,000 and 60,000 pounds. 3. Section 4.2.6, correct the illegal residential use at 3152 Siskiyou to the needed home site for a residence. 4. Section 4.2.6D, that applicant provide findings addressing the standards set forth in sections 4.26A, C, and E. 5. Section 7.3.1E, that applicant cease conducting public gatherings on property. 6. Section 9.1.3, that applicant establish limits of disturbance, which is any disturbance of land including development, grading, and removal of vegetation must be limited to the approved LDO 9.1.3, parentheses A and parentheses B. 7. Section 9.2, that applicant provide fencing at a minimum of 5 feet in height along the land zone for woodland resource use. Section 9.3, parentheses C, applicant provide an assessment of geological hazards and considerations and provide an assessment of suitability of the site through a geotechnical study of the site prior to issuance of any development permits. Section 9. Section 3.2.4C, require the applicant to submit a traffic assessment based on the number of employees and pursuant to LDO specifically making such available to the public. 10. Section 3.2.4E, applicant provide water resources information for both domestic and fire to the district fire department and to public demonstrating sufficiency. 11. Section 6.3.6C, applicant address the biohazard that disposal of solid waste presents to the public. 12. This is a general condition. Require applicant to provide professional, independent hydrological assessment of the impact of the development on the TID and monthly testing of TID water and neighbors' wells for any contamination and install a water meter on the applicant's well.
You can go ahead and finish up. I bet that's in the record already.
No, I'll get it to you.
Yes.
13 is another general. Monthly documentation of the adequacy of the waste collection from the pigs and chickens. Also, I have a list of the inspections that are required. It's a list of about 40 plus inspections that are required for a CAFO and for this particular project. I will also submit that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
There were a couple important sentences that I cut off trying to make things shorter. Uproot's application says that they're going to prevent contamination by picking up all waste daily. Pigs produce 11 pounds per day per pig. So you're looking at 220 to 440 pounds of excrement a day that they say they're going to pick up despite, regardless of rain, frost, snow, without supervision because they're gated, they're not accessible for unannounced inspections. And the slope is dangerously slippery when it's weather frosty.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there, Lincoln Zeev. I live in Ashland, about a third of a mile, I believe 2 properties over from the site. Have lived there for 10 years, have 10 acres, and I grow hay on my land. We've heard lots of information here. It would appear, looking from the crowd that's here in opposition, that Uproot is not considerably concerned with doing the right thing. Otherwise, these people wouldn't be out here with concern. At this point, their operation appears willing to risk enforcement fines as opposed to going through the normal process and receiving permission. They don't appear particularly concerned with addressing the needs of their neighbors, as several neighbors have indicated. And now we're talking about an additional operation with slaughtering of animals. All this, they sit above their neighbors so that they're in full sight, but also anything they do comes downhill, or anything their animals do comes downhill. And so this is really requiring neighbors to keep track of their operation. The county is woefully understaffed in this regard to keep track of enforcing, as indicated by the lateness of fines that have been addressed for buildings that have been built without permit, etc. So don't appear to be rule followers, and that's pretty important for the neighbors that sit below. It seems to me that there needs to be a full vetting of of Uproot's capabilities to remain within the rules that are required for food operations, and there don't appear to be adequate safeguards. So one other thing I would request is that a full survey by a certified surveying company be done. I've heard of property lines being crossed, etc. That seems to me to be part and parcel of something. So that would be my request to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Zeev.
We've been residents of the city for about 19 years, and we watched what has happened across the road. And I'm struck today. I have a prepared remarks which are in part of the package, and they're really pointing out that prior approval is required from several Oregon agencies, specifically the DEQ and the Department of Agriculture, and ongoing inspections are required from the FDA and specifically the Food Safety Inspection Services of any operation dealing with poultry and dealing with meat processing. What I can see is that this Uproot Ashland has been in operation for over 2 years, has no approvals that I can find that have been applied for and given before the fact. The most egregious aspect of that operation is that it's been operating for these 2 years in total disregard of the law. I strongly urge you to rectify the situation and assure the citizens affected by the business proposed for Lot 2803 that all relevant permits, licenses, and oversights are in order, and that the Uproot Ashland operation is in compliance with all state, local, and federal regulations prior to continuing operations of it as they've been doing. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else? We do have some cleanup stuff to do, and rebuttal by applicant. 5 minutes?
Yeah. Problems.
That's because the applicant does have the burden of proof, despite the applicant has more time.
Again, I just want to really repeat what I had stated previous, which was that we have registered our farm with the Oregon Department of Agriculture's water pollution and control facilities general permitting process program. So all of the concerns towards waste management, the feathers, the processing, the pigs, everything, all farm activity is now officially under the umbrella of Christopher Anderson with the livestock water quality. He is the livestock water quality specialist and is going to be developing the waste management plan and implementing ongoing site visits regularly. Basically, he's going to be our good friend for indefinite future, and that eliminates DEQ's participation, according to our conversation last week. And again, we're meeting with him this next week. And I just want to acknowledge that I absolutely hear all of the concerns. I agree, no more excavation. I agree to, the 5-foot fence and a lot of content that was raised and solution that was raised today. I absolutely, with or without this law, I want the same thing. 5 minutes. So as far as just the kind of my own personal character, I don't know. I just am. I don't know to what degree to cover just everything that's been said. I hear you, and regarding the water canal and the location of our property, we're extremely willing to, to find Chris Anderson. Why didn't I call him in September? I didn't know he existed. There's not a 1, 2, 3 ABC. This is how you start a small farm poultry processing operation. And I had to go, and we just came back from a field trip across the state. A very similar story. There's not one chicken processing facility in the state that hasn't been through this exact same situation. And in talking to them, we found him and are really grateful and excited that our own personal values and sustainability measures can be addressed along with the concerns of contamination and protection of this water canal. So, yeah, I'm sloppy, but I got that out. And I just also want to state my own personal character. Since the purchase of our property and establishment of our small business in Ashland, I have proactively and clearly communicated with tireless inquiry to a compliant relationship with the county planning department, state and local county code requirements in regards to the development and farm business activities on the property. Jackson County Planning Department, ODA. When we grew our cannabis, we had an OLCC license. I worked with Chris, the specialist in charge of our farm, and I've allowed all of these agencies to be involved in the planning process. I pulled a permit for the excavation. I came down to the county and told them, these are my plans, this is what I want to do. Yes, sloppy, but not the level of, we're not human murderers. We're trying to grow food and provide something that Ashland wants. And we're not afraid to be held accountable for every step we take as a business. We're not afraid to go above and beyond sustainability measures and practices which surpass the legal system. I agree with you. I was told, and many farms, most of the farm fresh chicken you get are registered as mobile poultry operations to avoid having to deal with the auditing from the state entities like DEQ and be held accountable for waste management. What we're doing is too important for our community. We are not afraid to be audited. We're not afraid to be held accountable for every step we take as a business indefinitely. We're not afraid to go above and beyond measures and practices which surpass the legal system and exemplify our business mission again, and personal belief systems. We have nothing to hide. We will protect our public waterway. We will produce clean food for our people. Again, I'm not perfect, and yeah, I want to address anyone that's willing to address me personally. This is the first time I've been approached in a manner that is had the ability to have a conversation around this. So yeah, if you'd like to talk to me directly, I've been willing to since the purchase of the property. Thank you.
We'll close the public hearing.